Hello, everyone. Welcome. And in this podcast episode, I will be talking about a very common problem, and it is called procrastination. And I will talk about what it really is, what you need to know about it, and how most of the information out there is incorrect. So let's dive in. And I would like to ask you personally to go ahead and reflect on these questions and tell me honestly, have you ever procrastinated before? Like, how silly, right? Of course you did. So have I, and so has everyone else. But procrastination is what? It is a delaying of something, it is putting things off. You're like not taking action on something. But the real question is, have you consciously caught yourself doing it? Because here's the deal, only about 1 to 5% of the time we catch ourselves consciously. The rest of the time, it is very highly unconscious. And the more conscious we become of our thoughts, of our thinking patterns, of our emotions and behaviors, the more we have the power and the ability to change. But this is what's really necessary for people, and that's why so many people are in pain, emotional pain, and even physical pain today, because now humanity is awaking to this very deep secret, which isn't really a secret, that all of your stuff, your behaviors and your responses and your relationships and the quality of your life stems from your subconscious programs. Now, when you caught yourself procrastinating, putting things off, did you call yourself names like, oh, I'm a lazy person, I'm a lazy bum? Some people are not quite as gentle, they call themselves losers. And all of these are, of course, beliefs about oneself. It's a belief about yourself, if this applies to you. And these beliefs over time create identities, these shadow characters, okay? And people have thousands and thousands of these negative beliefs about themselves because it is so painful to face them. And most people don't have the tools and the subconscious change techniques to integrate these negative self-concepts, so they suppress them. And anything that you suppress is going to stay with you and is going to continue to act out. This is another big secret. Like, anything that you're trying to avoid, anything that you're trying to not talk about, anything that you're trying to avoid discussing, it's still in you. And that is why so many people today feel triggered and so easily insulted, because they have their subconscious world completely unshaped and full of junk. All right? So procrastination is really interesting because it has like hundreds and hundreds of layers to it, and it can show up differently for different people. Some people will not start with something. Other people will not finish something. Certain personalities will avoid something. All of these are like symptoms of procrastination. Some people will not want to talk about something even though it's important and it would be like logically a really smart thing to do, but let's not talk about it. We'll do it later. And of course, anytime you say later, that's a trick of the ego, and the later never comes. It becomes sort of a excuse mechanism to not have to take responsibility for something and not have to grow above your current situation. Some people don't follow through. That's how procrastination shows up for them. So, the list goes on. But the purpose of this presentation is not to enlighten you with how it shows up, but rather to tell you where it's coming from. And as I said, about 5% of the reasons people know, and the remaining 95% is completely outside of conscious awareness. So, what is it that you want to do and yet you're not doing? Why are you personally procrastinating? What are you trying to avoid unconsciously? You see, when you learn about the subconscious mind and its intricacies and its thousands of tricks and its thousands of programs, you will also see that a lot of times when we don't go for something, a lot of times when we don't seek out something that we really want, it is because we are bringing some baggage with us from the past. And it is because we are, this would be the other part, because we are afraid of facing something in the future. So most people are stuck between the two worlds because they don't have their stories and childhood stories and ancestral stories cleaned up. And we project these unhealed stories into the future. So we don't want that pain. We don't want to talk about what has been because most people, let's face it, don't have a clue how to do that. I've been training coaches for 10 plus years, and as I evolved over the years, I realized that what's available, the therapy model available today is just really bad. I personally went to therapy for 30 years and no one could help me because, the stuff comes from a much, much deeper place. So once you have the awareness, however, of the fact that you are procrastinating, and you can start taking it apart, okay? Anything that you don't know about or don't know of is going to be just going on, continuing on an autopilot. And that is why it's important to every now and then take a step back and observe yourself. Now, the more conscious you are, the more you can start observing yourself, but it still doesn't mean that you'll be able to fix it, okay? This is sort of a misconception that I have seen and heard over the years, that people think this is something they can do on their own. It's not true. There's some things, maybe like 10% of the things that you can do on your own, but then the remaining 90% you have to learn from someone who has overcome it and who can teach you. This would be a mentor, a teacher, somebody that you actually trust and who has the results that you want and has been where you are. So when I interview people, like, what is your reason of procrastinating? The answers are relatively common, and I'm not trying to bash anything here, just like telling you how you really have to be able to go beyond the immediate answers. So some people say, the fear of failure. Of course, that's an ancient fear. Could be going back to hundreds of lifetimes, centuries, and it has all sorts of entanglements. So most people fear failure, and not because we don't know logically what it is, but because we have all sorts of additional stories wrapped up in this fear of failure. And the additional stories are quite often invisible, very often are at such a deep level that if you don't know of that depth, then the fear of failure is going to be just sort of the automatic answer. Oh yeah, I'm afraid of failure. And then you do a quick trick, a hack, a technique, and it's going to circle back and it's going to continue to give you trouble. Some people think that procrastination is caused by the lack of motivation. Well, in a way, yes, but there's a lot more depth to it. Why are you not motivated? What are you trying to avoid? What story are you bringing with you from the past that you haven't worked through? And typically it's not one story. Typically it's hundreds of stories. What stories have you not resolved that give you this caution or this mechanism, the defense mechanism, where you would rather say no to your future than to go for it, right? And there's all sorts of answers out there. So I want you to know that the way you phrase things is nice, but there's like so much more depth to it when you get to know the spiritual psychology and the quantum psychology, where real failures come from, where real procrastination comes from. Some of my interview subjects and clients said that they feel overwhelmed. Well, I'll tell you what, that overwhelm is a very tricky and relatively nasty trick of the ego. You're only feeling overwhelmed because you have taken on too much and you're running additional shadow stories that claim space in your head, in your mind, and they use that energy that you could otherwise use for productive things, the energy that you could be using to heal yourself, the energy that you could be using to put yourself out and create something awesome. So this overwhelm is very important to know about, but it is not the real problem. All of these things are just symptoms. And that's what I want you to know, that people focus way too much on the symptoms. Then I also heard from some people, like, why are you procrastinating? I have anxiety. All right. Well, everybody has some level of anxiety. And in my online course called The Ultimate Breakthrough Formula, I break down the 7 real causes of anxiety. Not the superficial, surface level stuff. No, it's the real causes of anxiety. And it's a lot deeper than people realize. So all of these things, these are symptoms. Anxiety is a symptom, yet again, that causes task aversion, and people will simply not take action or not go for something, even though logically, if they were to put down on their to-do list, they would want it, they will stop themselves because of all this past stuff and the fear of future and all that, right? Now, some people say that the perfectionism, the perfectionist persona is what's stopping them. And it is still just a symptom. Perfectionism is still a symptom. It's not the real problem. Perfectionism is also an avoidance tactic. What are you trying to avoid, right? And it's much deeper than people realize. And the more we do something, the longer we do something, the better we get at it. So it becomes habitual. But this is what I have seen for many, many years since I do like the deep quantum level transformation for my clients and for my students, is that people get wrapped up too much on the surface level stuff, and perfectionism becomes almost like the ultimate or the only answer. Perfectionism has dozens of additional reasons behind it. And when you identify those reasons and heal them, your need for perfectionism goes away, and you will be able to deliver pretty darn awesome products and pretty amazing results. But again, that excuse is what should give you guys an idea that something is going on, something much deeper. Now, some people may be afraid of negative feedback. This is what we call fear of rejection. Well, I don't want to do this because then I might feel rejected / they will give me negative feedback. It will give me this and this negative emotion. All of that is just unhealed stuff in your subconscious, right? After all, anyone and everyone, whenever they say something, they're only projecting their own world onto you. So in other words, they just speak about how they would like things to be, and what they talk about is just a projection of their own self-image, self-concepts, and belief system. So it has very little to do with you. And yet that's so common that you would take things personally. And the purpose of all of these internal triggers, the purpose of all of these offenses when you feel offended, is for you to realize that you've got junk in your mind. And this other person or that word, that story, whatever caused this avalanche or this domino effect, is a gift to you to start unarchiving your own stories and heal it. So, as you could see, procrastination is way more costly than what one would give credit for. Because if you want to really live a good life, you are supposed to start fixing these or eliminating these blocks, healing yourself, get down into the subconscious level and then the unconscious level, and then face these stories. Because what you ultimately want to do is to start living meaningfully and purposefully. But our ego has 10,000 tricks, and it has been steering our boat. First, it took off the rudder, and it's moving it for us, telling us that, oh, it's in charge. Well, it is. But it's really not giving us the direction and the truth that we need for us to embrace our purpose and for us to embrace a direction that would serve us in the long run. So when you catch yourself procrastinating, or it might be your child who does it, and you become consciously aware of it, why is that happening? What are they trying to avoid? What past stories and what ancestral stories have accumulated strongly enough to give them this aversion to not do something? Okay? Always ask yourself why something is happening. And then when you get that answer, ask yourself again, why is that? In my book called The Mastering of Your Mind, I give a lot of very practical techniques that you can ask and you need to ask, so that when you get an answer, again, when you get an unconscious answer, you don't just run with it. There's always a reason behind that, a reason behind that, reason behind that. And when you get a real awesome mentor, then you'll be able to see the psychology behind it, the spiritual and then the quantum psychology behind it. At the end of the day, most people procrastinate because they are horrified of their purpose. And the ego has hidden that under 20,000 layers of junk and crap. And this is not something that people can just magically unarchive and heal. You need a mentor. It's really important, more than ever. These days, it has become evident and painfully obvious that the people are ready and are expected and they are supposed to step up their game. So the procrastination is sort of an old pattern, and you need to find out why you're procrastinating, what you're procrastinating about, and how you need to shift your unconscious beliefs so that you can step on the path that serves you and it serves humanity. Because when you procrastinate, you are shortchanging yourself, you're shortchanging the ones you love, you're shortchanging the world from the gifts and from the momentum that you are supposed to create. And the consequences of this action or the lack of action, called procrastination, is something that is not going to be taken lightly anymore. And in the new energy and the new earth, those of you that understand that term, and more people will have to learn, is sort of a good opportunity for you to learn about how your mind works, learn about your behaviors, and we are never our behaviors. Here's another myth buster. We are a total sum of our emotions, our beliefs, our identities, and our values. The behavior is just a byproduct of all of those things. So it's a good start when you see yourself doing something and you don't like it. And then you need to know how to take that apart, how to analyze it, and understand what causes it. You see, the cause and effect is what's missing. So when you step on this path, the new path, the new earth, and you feel that it is time to really do something different, you will have to face a lot of your excuses, all of these temptations, to procrastinate. And trust me, I've been through it too. And as I said, ultimately it's an avoidance tactic to deter you from a higher purpose, to become useful, to become somebody that you would really deep down dream about becoming, but with those stories and the ancestral patterns and everything else, it is not something that is going to be granted to you, because you are supposed to heal. You're supposed to find the logic of the universe. You're supposed to merge yourself with the world and the universe so that you're not fighting things unconsciously, but rather embracing the new energy and then deliver something that is unique to you, that is aligned with you, that comes from the heart. And when you are at that level, procrastination as a concept disappears. It just goes away. And you'll take inspired action. You will be full of joy, full of bliss. And everything and anything that you put your mind to and your heart to will become yours. You can manifest it with ease. All right? So, guys, this is the end of the podcast. Make sure that you always go to my website at amindinstitute.com. So it's Advanced Mind Institute, amindinstitute.com, and check out the latest online courses, the latest podcasts. And the purpose of this is so that you can wake up. You can start leaving these self-destructive and pretty bad patterns behind. The world needs you, but the world needs you to be upgraded. You can't run things the way you used to because it's just not going to work anymore. So this is your chance to step up. This is your chance to clean up your mind. This is your chance to tap into your operating system and understand that when you bridge the gap between your current operating system that's probably rather chaotic, and then you understand and immerse yourself with the universal laws, then the universe will have your back. You will not have the need to hide. You will not have the need to feel ashamed. You can emerge. So you could really bring the value that you are supposed to bring to the world. All right, guys. So the next week's episode, I will talk about self-esteem and some of the subconscious techniques that you need to know, you need to learn and apply so that you could show up more confidently in the world and start offering a leadership, a form of new leadership that is so much in need today. Catch you guys next week.